Klaus Weber didn't just work on building the Berlin Wall in 1961. He was secretly digging escape tunnels underneath it while his supervisors thought he was laying foundation stones. For nearly 3 decades, his hidden network of passages helped over 100 East Germans escape to freedom, becoming one of the most successful underground resistance operations of the Cold War. But what construction workers discovered in 2014 when they were expanding Berlin's metro system would reveal that Klaus's tunnels held a darker secret than anyone had imagined, and the skeletons found deep beneath the city streets belonged to the people who were never supposed to make it to the other side. This is the story of a construction worker whose day job became his cover for the most dangerous resistance operation in Cold War history. A man who spent his nights digging freedom while spending his days building oppression, whose underground legacy would remain hidden for 50 years until modern excavation revealed the true cost of Cold War espionage. August 13th, 1961. Klaus Weber, a 30-year-old construction foreman, stood among hundreds of East German workers as they received their orders to build what would become the most infamous barrier in modern history. The Berlin Wall was to be constructed in sections, and Klaus's crew was assigned to a stretch near Checkpoint Charlie, where the concrete barrier would separate families, friends, and lovers for the next 28 years. Klaus had grown up in East Berlin, but his younger sister Maria lived just 3 blocks away on the western side of the city. When the border was sealed overnight, she became as unreachable as if she lived on another continent. As Klaus mixed cement and laid concrete blocks that first week, he watched East German guards shoot people trying to climb over his handiwork, and he knew he couldn't live with what he was building. The idea came to him on August 20th, exactly 1 week after construction began. Klaus was digging foundation trenches for the wall's concrete footings when he realized that the ground beneath Berlin was mostly sandy soil left over from ancient riverbeds. It was perfect for tunneling, stable enough to hold its shape, but soft enough to dig with hand tools. That night, Klaus returned to the construction site after his shift ended, using keys he had copied from the supervisor's office. He entered the restricted area and began what would become the most ambitious tunnel system in Berlin's history. Working only between midnight and 4 a.m., Klaus started digging a narrow passage from the basement of an abandoned building on the East German side toward a cafe he had identified on the western side. Klaus's engineering background served him well. He had learned tunnel construction techniques during his mandatory military service, and he understood how to shore up underground passages to prevent collapse. Using lumber borrowed from the official construction site, Klaus built a sophisticated support system that would keep his tunnels stable for decades. The first tunnel took Klaus 3 months to complete. It was barely wide enough for a person to crawl through, but it worked. On November 15th, 1961, Klaus helped his first refugee escape, a teenage boy whose father had been arrested by the Stasi for criticizing the government. The boy made it safely to West Berlin, and Klaus realized he had found his true calling. Over the next 5 years, Klaus expanded his operations systematically. He recruited a small network of trusted helpers, including his cousin Otto, who worked as a night watchman, and Ingrid, a nurse who provided medical care for injured refugees. They established safe houses, created false identity documents, and developed a communication system using coded messages in East German newspapers. Klaus's tunnels were masterpieces of underground engineering. He built multiple routes with different entry and exit points, creating a redundant system that could continue operating even if one passage was discovered. The tunnels included ventilation shafts, emergency exits, and even small rest areas where refugees could wait if conditions above ground were dangerous. By 1966, Klaus had helped 78 people escape to West Berlin. His operation was so successful that it caught the attention of both Western intelligence agencies and the Stasi. The CIA began providing Klaus with better tools and communication equipment, while the Stasi launched intensive efforts to identify and capture what they called the Underground Railroad. The end came suddenly in March 1907. Klaus arrived at one of his tunnel entrances to find Stasi agents waiting for him. Someone in his network had been turned into an informant, and Klaus barely escaped capture by fleeing through one of his own emergency exits. The Stasi raided all known tunnel locations, arresting several of Klaus's associates and sealing the passages with concrete. Klaus went into hiding, but he couldn't bring himself to abandon his mission entirely. Instead of operating a large network, he began working alone, digging smaller, more temporary tunnels that could be used once and then abandoned. Between 1967 and 1972, Klaus helped another 24 people escape, though the work became increasingly dangerous as Stasi surveillance intensified. The final phase of Klaus's operation began in 1973, when he decided to create one last, permanent tunnel that would serve as his masterpiece. This passage would be deeper than the others, more carefully concealed, and equipped with better ventilation and lighting. Klaus spent 2 years excavating what he called Freedom Highway, a tunnel nearly half a mile long that connected East Berlin's Mitte district with a subway station in West Berlin. Freedom Highway was Klaus's most ambitious project, but it was also his downfall. The tunnel was so deep and sophisticated that it required industrial-grade equipment to complete. Klaus began stealing tools and materials from various construction sites around Berlin, a pattern that eventually attracted attention from Stasi investigators who were specifically looking for underground resistance activities. On October 3, 1975, Klaus was captured while emerging from Freedom Highway's western entrance. He had been under surveillance for weeks, and the Stasi had allowed him to complete the tunnel so they could identify his entire network. Klaus was arrested along with 12 other people, including refugees who had been waiting to use the passage. Klaus Weber disappeared into the East German prison system and was never seen again. Official records listed him as dying of pneumonia while serving a 20-year sentence for crimes against the state, but no body was ever returned to his family. His sister Maria, who had spent 14 years waiting for him to contact her from the western side, never learned what happened to her brother. The Stasi sealed Klaus's tunnels with concrete, but they also did something else. They began using the passages for their own purposes. Freedom Highway, Klaus's masterpiece, became a secret transportation route for Stasi operations, allowing East German agents to move undetected between East and West Berlin. For the next 14 years, until the Berlin Wall fell in 1989, Klaus's tunnel system was used by the very people he had fought against. The Stasi converted the passages into underground command centers, weapons storage facilities, and execution sites for captured Western spies. Klaus's dream of freedom had become a nightmare of oppression. The truth about Klaus's tunnels remained buried until 2014, when Berlin's Transportation Authority began expanding the U5 subway line. Construction workers using ground-penetrating radar detected unexpected cavities beneath the city, leading to one of the most significant archaeological discoveries in Berlin's post-war history. The first tunnel was discovered on June 15, 2014, when a subway excavation broke through into what appeared to be a man-made underground chamber. Initial exploration revealed a sophisticated network of passages with wooden support beams, ventilation systems, and even primitive electrical lighting. City archaeologists were called in to investigate what they assumed was a World War II bunker system. Dr. Sarah Hoffman, the lead archaeologist on the project, immediately recognized that the tunnels were too new to be from the Nazi era. Carbon dating of the wooden support structures indicated construction between 1961 and 1975, exactly matching the period of Klaus Weber's operations. But it was what Dr. Hoffman found deeper in the tunnel system that shocked everyone involved in the investigation. In the deepest section of what had been Klaus's Freedom Highway, excavators discovered a chamber containing the skeletal remains of at least 15 people. Unlike typical burial sites, these skeletons were arranged in rows and showed signs of execution-style killings. Forensic analysis revealed that all had died from gunshot wounds to the head, and several still wore the remnants of Western military uniforms. Dr. Hoffman's team realized they had stumbled upon one of the Stasi's most closely guarded secrets: an underground execution site where captured Western agents and failed defectors had been killed and secretly buried. The very tunnels that Klaus had built to save lives had been converted into a killing ground by the East German secret police. Further excavation revealed the full scope of the Stasi's use of Klaus's tunnel system. The passages had been expanded and modified to include holding cells, interrogation rooms, and weapons storage areas. Documents found in waterproof containers indicated that at least 1,000 people had been executed in the tunnels between 1975 and 1987, including several CIA operatives and a number of East Germans who had been caught trying to escape. The most disturbing discovery came when forensic experts identified one of the skeletons as Klaus Weber himself. Dental records confirmed that Klaus had not died of pneumonia in prison as official records claimed. Instead, he had been executed in his own tunnel system, probably sometime in 1976, less than a year after his capture. The revelation of Klaus's fate and the Stasi's use of his tunnels created an international sensation. The German government launched a comprehensive investigation into Cold War-era human rights violations, and the site was designated as a memorial to victims of communist oppression. Klaus's story became a symbol of how totalitarian regimes corrupt even the most noble acts of resistance. Maria Weber, Klaus's sister, was 84 years old when she learned the truth about her brother's fate. She had spent nearly 40 years believing that Klaus might still be alive somewhere, perhaps in a Soviet prison camp or living under an assumed identity in the West. The confirmation of his death was devastating, but it also brought closure to a family that had lived with uncertainty for decades. The Klaus Weber Memorial was established at the tunnel site in 2016, featuring a museum that tells the story of Berlin's underground resistance networks. Visitors can walk through restored sections of Klaus's original tunnels and see the chamber where he and other victims were killed. The memorial has become one of Berlin's most visited historical sites, attracting over 200,000 visitors annually. The discovery of Klaus's tunnels also led to a broader investigation of Cold War-era resistance operations throughout Eastern Europe. Similar tunnel systems were found in Prague, Budapest, and Warsaw, suggesting that Klaus's methods had been copied and adapted by resistance networks across the Soviet sphere of influence. In 2018, the German government officially recognized Klaus Weber as a victim of political persecution and awarded him posthumous citizenship of the Federal Republic of Germany. His name was added to the memorial wall at Checkpoint Charlie, alongside other victims of the Berlin Wall. The ceremony was attended by Maria Weber, who finally received the recognition her brother had deserved for over 50 years. Klaus's story has been documented in numerous books, films, and academic studies about Cold War resistance movements. His engineering innovations are studied by military historians and tunnel construction experts, while his personal story has become a powerful symbol of individual courage in the face of institutional oppression. The tunnels themselves remain partially accessible as part of the memorial site, though most of the network has been filled with concrete for safety reasons. The section where Klaus was killed has been preserved exactly as it was found, serving as a stark reminder of how totalitarian regimes respond to those who dare to resist their authority. Modern ground-penetrating radar surveys have revealed that Klaus's tunnel system was even more extensive than initially discovered. Researchers estimate that the complete network included over 2 miles of passages, making it one of the largest resistance infrastructure projects of the Cold War era. The full scope of Klaus's achievement may never be completely understood. Klaus Weber's legacy extends beyond his role as a tunnel builder and resistance fighter. His story illustrates the complex moral landscape of the Cold War, where acts of heroism and oppression often occurred in the same physical spaces. The tunnels he built to save lives became the tools of those who took lives, demonstrating how political systems can corrupt even the most noble intentions. Today, Klaus's story is taught in German schools as part of the curriculum on resistance to authoritarianism. His example is used to illustrate the importance of individual action in the face of systemic injustice, and the tragic consequences that such action sometimes entails. Students who visit the memorial often ask the same question: was Klaus's sacrifice worth it? The answer, according to the 124 people who successfully escaped through his tunnels, is unequivocally yes. Many of these refugees and their descendants attended the memorial's dedication ceremony, paying tribute to the man who risked everything so they could live freely. Their presence served as a powerful reminder that Klaus's work, despite its tragic end, had achieved its ultimate purpose. Klaus Weber died at age 45, executed in the tunnels he had built with his own hands. But his legacy lives on in the lives he saved, the courage he inspired, and the reminder he provides that freedom is worth any sacrifice. His story teaches us that sometimes the most important victories are achieved underground, in darkness, by people whose names history almost forgets. The Berlin Wall fell in 1989, 14 years after Klaus's death. He never lived to see the reunification of Germany or the vindication of his beliefs about human freedom. But every person who walks freely between East and West Berlin today walks on ground that Klaus helped to liberate, one tunnel, one refugee, one act of courage at a time.